Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're gonna be working on my MR2 right here, and I'm gonna show you guys how to bleed the cooling system. There are a couple different reasons why you would need to bleed the cooling system, but honestly, the main one is just maintenance. Maybe you replaced a radiator, coolant hose, mileage, etc. I mean, time. There's a variety of reasons. In my case, I found a small leak. I fixed the leak, so just as a precaution, I'm gonna re-bleed the system. I've actually seen a few different approaches to getting the air out of a coolant system on an MR2. I always prefer simplicity, and also I don't have compressed air. So what I like to do is actually bring the rear end of the car up and then use a funnel. And obviously, as we go through the video, you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. As I mentioned, I want to get the back end up. Normally, I would just jack the car up. So I would jack it up via the rear subframe and then put one jack on each side under the pinch welds. If you're curious where you put the jack exactly, if you come on either side of the car, right here's the pinch weld, you'll see two little indents right here, and you'd put the jack right there. These can be messed up sometimes, which can make it a little tricky. Fortunately for me, my pinch welds are pretty clean, except for right here where they got a little messed up. Unfortunately, I actually don't have my jacks or jack stands here. Normally, I would be doing this type of work at the other garage, but we're supposed to have a storm tonight. The V6 MR2 is there along with the R32 Skyline. The V6 MR2 does not have a engine hood, and then the Skyline, some of the seals are bad, so anytime it rains, it just starts pooling up water, and I really don't want those cars outside in the rain. So I'm stuck here, kind of just using what I got. And what I got to work with is this. I just have some rams to lift the car up a little bit. On top of that, my garage is actually slanted, so that helps as well. Other thing I'll note is that, of course, I got to make sure that those wheels are blocked off so this doesn't roll away. Definitely make sure to do that. The back end is elevated, so I'll start touching on some of the tools you will need. You're going to need a flathead, and honestly, this one may be too small, but we'll see once I get in there. And if you have an aftermarket radiator, you may need a wrench, or I guess pliers would work. Again, if you have an aftermarket radiator, you're going to want some type of thread sealant as well. Here's a funnel. This is going to make your life so much easier. I bought that funnel a couple of years ago, and I don't remember where I got it from, but I will make sure to do a quick Google search and actually put a link for that product in the description, because it makes your life so much easier when bleeding the coolant system on any car, especially the MR2. You are also going to need your choice of coolant. I just use generic green stuff. I do want to note, coolant choice is a major point of contention. I've seen arguments essentially saying you should only use the Toyota specific red coolant. Other people saying just use the generic green stuff, it's fine. Ultimately, that's your choice. Use whatever coolant you want. Also, you'll notice I only have 1 gallon. And again, that's because I'm pretty much just topping off the car. That leak was so tiny that I'm not worried that I lost a lot of coolant. It's just more air was introduced into the system. So I want to do my best to get it out. But if you're doing like a radiator replacement or something like that, or flushing the whole system out, the system's actually pretty big. I believe it's just over 3 gallons. So you're going to want quite a bit of coolant. Last thing you will need is in the bags. We got gloves. I always like to use gloves whenever I work on the cars. But the other thing is you will actually need tubing. The inner diameter for that hose is 8 millimeters. A lot of these cars actually came with tubing from the factory, so you can bleed out the coolant system. After years, you know, they get lost and stuff like that. So I just wanted to tell you guys the size. Also, in terms of length, I just went and got one that was about 10 feet long, and I cut it in half because you're going to need 2 of them. Time to actually get started. So a lot of cars have these pieces missing, but luckily I still have them. First piece is right here. So this covers up the radiator. So you'll take this off. It just kind of, you just kind of have to finagle it out. The second thing that needs to come out is actually this plastic trim right here. Right here is also where the spare tire goes. I actually still have mine. I'm never gonna use it, but I just can't bring myself to get rid of it for whatever reason. Anyways, we are going to take this piece out, and it comes out relatively easy. Again, you just kind of have to finagle it. I always start on the passenger side first, and then I go over to the driver's side. Now that we got these 2 pieces off, we can actually look at the 2 bleeder valves that are up front. So this one is actually for the heater core. So that's why you need a flathead to reach in between this metal piece and there. Quick little note. So you see this little guy right here, that actually moves. With the lever closest to the front of the car, that actually means that the heater core is like blocked off, if that makes sense. And then if you push that lever back, it means like it's open, and that means you're gonna actually have heat blowing. And that's just important to note, because if your climate control knob broke, you can still actuate actuate it through there. Here's a little clip where you can see that the knob is going back and forth as I'm actuating it from the outside of the car. Up next, we're actually going to attach these tubings on each of the bleeder valves. As I mentioned, there's the one right here and then the one right here. The front bleed points are ready to go. On the heater core, I started turning it, but I haven't cracked it open completely yet. And you'll know it's open enough because fluid just starts coming out. Over here, I really didn't have much of a choice because if I had the car running and I cracked open the little nut, the fluid literally just starts spouting out. If you have an OE radiator though, you don't have to worry about that because you just twist these little tops and then boom. I actually tried to source an OE radiator for this car. I was not able to. 2 years ago on the V6 MR2, I was able to source a turbo radiator. Since then, I guess they're just out of stock. Toyota doesn't make them anymore, at least to my knowledge. Pretty much the only option is an aftermarket unit. This kit actually has various attachments, as you can see right in there. I've used this one before though, so I already know which ones are right for the MR2. And she's all set up. What's nice is that she has this little piece here. When the car's done bleeding, all I have to do is block it off, and then I can just take the coolant that's left over in here and actually put it back in the container. Up next is filling up the system, which isn't going to take much. She's filled up. I'm not gonna fill her up a lot just because I don't anticipate a lot of coolant going anywhere. But like I said, this is gonna be good for the moment. I will make sure to keep an eye on it so the coolant level stays topped off. So right now, the plan is to, well, bleed the coolant. We're gonna come into the car, make sure she's in neutral. Of course, you gotta shake it multiple times. Put the heater on full blast, put that down. And then from here, we're going to turn her on. Neutral again. Turn the radio off. All right, and she is good to go. Last thing to do is actually turn on the blower fan. A good sign you got air in the system is that you're gonna see bubbling like this right here. We are actually up at the front right now, and what's kind of shocking to me is that I'm not seeing a lot of air bubbles come out. I actually anticipated, oh, right here's one that just came up from the heater core. I hope you guys can see that. I know you guys won't be able to feel this, but one of the ways you'll know you're on the right track is because you'll actually feel the heater be warm. So right now, as I put my hand on it, it doesn't feel warm just yet, but I know give it a little bit of time and it'll be good. Another thing to be careful of is also just your temperature gauge. You just want to make sure that it doesn't get too hot as you're doing this. In my situation, this is actually going really smooth. I'm just pretty much letting the car idle and it's going good. Let's say though, you're having some trouble getting some of those air bubbles out because they can be pesky. A couple of things you can do is you can go to the hoses and actually just kind of squish them. Squishing the hoses around can help move the air bubbles and get them out. Another thing you can do is also play with the RPMs a little bit. So I do not want you to go through and just mash the throttle, but maybe you bring it up to 1500 RPM, hold it there for 30 seconds, and then drop it down slightly, hold it there for another 30 seconds. Those vibrations could also help get some of the air bubbles out as well. Here I am giving the car a little bit of throttle. A few more air bubbles are starting to come out. They're just minor ones that are working their way loose. It seemed like giving it a little bit of gas actually helped because I noticed a few more bubbles are starting to come out of here. Car seems to be up to temperature. When I put my hand here in front of the air vent, it is nice and toasty. The temp gauge is where it's always at, and I don't see any more air bubbles coming out. Just wanted to show you guys from the front. There's no air bubbles coming out of here. And then if we come over here, there's nothing else coming out as well. The funnel here at the back end looks good as well. Right now the plan is to cap the radiator off and then the heater core. Yeah, then we can shut her off. The car is actually good to go. I put the radiator cap back on, or I guess coolant cap in this case. I've left the car idling. It's still blowing really hot air, so that's exactly what I want. The temp gauge is staying. I don't think you guys can really see it, but I can see it. The temp gauge is right where it should be. If we come over here, there is no leaks. I did forget to take this off, so I'll do that real quick. Gonna be careful. Try not to get, oh crud. That's why I put a towel there. I'm gonna put the camera down real quick and I'll take care of that little mess. I got that little mess all cleaned up. I mean, it's not perfectly dry, but it's gonna be good enough. So yeah, I'm actually going to shut the car off right now. Shutting the car off. And it is good to go. That one's surprisingly smooth from start to finish. I started about 1 o'clock and it's about 1:40, so about 40 minutes, which isn't too bad as a whole. If you are able to, I would highly recommend taking the car for a spin around the block afterwards just to make sure everything's good. Last thing we're gonna do is actually put the cover back on. For the one that covers the front area, I actually recommend starting on the driver's side, getting that put in, and then doing the passenger side. Over here, the biggest thing is actually getting the panel under this portion, and then everything else tends to just fall right into place relatively easy. I hope that this was helpful to someone out there, and I don't have anything else for this video. If you do got any comments, leave them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. And with that being said, see you guys in the next one.